In this video, we're going to take a look at adding some decals using the planar projection mode on a fill layer. So here, once again, I'm in the body texture set, and I am going to create a fill layer. I want to make sure that I place this below my dirt. So here I have this hard surface layer selected. I will click my add fill layer button. And then here, I'm just going to double click and give this a name. I'll just call this decals and hit enter. So now, because I'm using a fill layer, I have a basic material here already in place. This is going to work for what I want to do. However, what I need to do for my next step is just mask. So I'm going to come over here to my mask option and choose to add a black mask. So now we are masking out this fill layer that we just created. With the mask selected, I can come over to my add effect, and I'm going to choose to add a fill within this mask. So now in the properties, I can actually add a texture here to generate this mask. So what I'm going to do is come over here to my alphas, and I'll do a search for font. And we have a couple of these font alphas that you can use. The one that I'm going to be working with is called Font Orbitron. So I'll left click and drag and drop that here to the grayscale input. Next, we are going to change our projection mode to planar projection. In the 3D view, we have a box enclosing our 3D mesh, which represents the projection volume for projecting the content of this fill layer here in 3D space. At the top of the toolbar, if you don't see the volume, there's an option here to show or hide the manipulator, so you can turn this on and off. Here you have the ability to control the manipulator size, and then you also have your move, rotate, and scale. And the keyboard shortcut for these is W is move, E is rotate, and R is scale. So if I hit the W key and I go back to move, you can see that I can actually move this projection here in this 3D space. So here I'm going to come over to my toolbar and I'm going to activate the surface tool. Now this little square widget, if I just left click and drag, you can see that it snaps to the surface of the 3D mesh. What's really cool about this is that it automatically aligns the projection. So now I can actually just drag this projection across the surface of the 3D model. So here in my case, I'm going to hit the R key to go into the scale tool, and I will start to scale this down. Now you'll notice here that as I start to scale, we're starting to get some repeating here. So I definitely don't want to have any repeats. So within the properties underneath UV wrap, you can see it's set to repeat by default. I'm going to switch this to none. So that's going to take care of the repeat. And now I'm going to hit the E key to go to rotate, and I'm just going to rotate my text decal here into place. And again, just using my translate tools to position this right where I want it to be. So you can see here, I'm just making a few changes with my scale and rotation and position. And here we go. You can see that we've now placed this decal here on the surface of the 3D mesh. Now with the fill layer selected, let's go to the properties. This is actually a procedural substance. So of course I can go in and change the name. So for the text, you can give your robot any name that you like. I have this made up name that I'm already using. And for the type, I'm going to set this here to bold. And of course, I can start to also play around if I want with the size of the font and so on. All right, so at this stage, let's go over and turn off our manipulator. You can see that we have a nice decal, and that was easily placed using the planar projection mode here on our fill layer. So now I'd like to add a number indicator. So I could just create a new fill layer, but one of the things that we can do is we can actually copy and paste content within our layer mask. So I'm going to right click just to save some time and choose to copy the effect. Then I can just simply right click again and use paste effect. So now I have another layer. Let's jump down to my text, and this time I'm going to type in the number 5, and then I will enable the manipulator, and let's just go ahead and adjust our rotation and scale. So here I'm going to scale this guy up pretty large. I can actually do a non-uniform by scaling here on the X axis. I'll hit W for my move tool and just start to position this number here in place. Now, one thing you've probably noticed right off the bat is that this layer is now overriding the content that we created below it. No problem, because here with these fill layers, we also have full access to blending modes. So in order to combine these two layers together, I'm simply going to switch the blending mode for the top fill layer to this max lighten mode. And so now I can see the effect of both of the fill layers. So let me reposition this number 5 here. I might scale it down a little bit, maybe scale it in the Y axis. And here we go. So now I have my decal set. All right, there's one other thing that I want to point out about this planar projection mode. We have this area of influence, which controls how this decal is being projected in our 3D space. Well, if I start to move around towards the back, you're going to notice that, wow, our number 5 ID is actually projecting through the mesh and showing up here on the back side. And that is because the manipulator for the planar projection is encompassing the entire object. So I could hit the W key to go to my move, and you can see here that as I start to move this area of influence in the Z axis, and the projection box is no longer encompassing the mesh, it starts to disappear. So again, this box is controlling this projection area for our decal. So instead of having to move this box, I could just come over here to this culling option and just enable it. So here you can see that we're going to have an angle and a hardness. And just by enabling this culling value, it automatically culls that decal from the back side. So now that gives us the exact effect that we were going for. So here I will come over to my manipulator. I'm going to turn this guy off. And now we have our decals in place. If we wanted to grunge this up even more, we could come over here to our mask. I'm going to add another fill layer. This time I'll click my grayscale button, and I'm just going to use the mini shelf in this case, and I'm going to do a search here for grunge, and I can look at several of these kind of grunge maps. So let's see what we have. Maybe go with something like this grunge dirt heavy. So we can grab this guy here, and again, I could maybe put this into a triplanar projection. Let's look at some of the controls. We have our balance and our contrast. And here for the blending mode, I could just set this to subtract. And now I can adjust the overall balance to kind of bring back my decal, and I can use this balance control to dial up this kind of wearing effect that I've just created here. So like I said, just another way to add just that extra level of detail. So we can also use decals that come with Substance Source. So here I'm going to drag in the Substance Launcher, and you can see that under the decals category that we have some leaks and stains, and we have all kinds of these decals that we can work with here. So I can just browse through and find something. So I have this one here, which is this large grunge gradient. And so since I have Substance Painter already open, I can just come over and click this Send to Substance Painter. It will download the Substance Source file and then send that directly here into my Painter shelf. Now, I already have done that. So if I come over to Painter and I just do a quick search here in the shelf, I can see this is the large grunge dirt gradient that I want to work with. So I can apply this as a decal pretty quickly by just holding down the Alt key and then left click and drag right here onto the model. And you can see what this is going to do. It's going to apply this material as a fill layer, and the fill layer is automatically going to be set to this planar projection. So now I can use the surface tool, which is enabled here at the top of the toolbar, and I can just quickly drag this along the surface of the mesh, and then I can use my rotate, position, and scale tools to line up this decal. So here you can see I'm just going to scale this guy up quite a bit. Let's move it this way, and then I'll scale it in the Y. So we'll get something like this, and again, I'll just move it up. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the overall projection box here is going to encompass the entire 3D asset. So I'll just move this here towards the middle, and actually I'll just scale a bit on the Z. Now I know that the culling option is enabled, so I'm just going to turn that off, and then here I'll turn off my manipulator so we can see what we're doing. Now we've quickly added this dirt, and if we take a look at the backside, we can see because I disabled the culling option, we start to get kind of this dirt here towards the bottom as well. So again, we'll just move back around. Let's take a look at the front of the robot. Now, if we jump over to our material, because this is an actual substance material, again, coming from source, I have some controls here that I can start to play with. So I can play around with some of these values just to kind of dial in some variation here. And I think I'll just go with something like that. Now, of course, I can always just, with the layer selected, go back to my manipulator and then just move this around here on the mesh however I want. So I think I'm just going to go with something like that for now. So that was just a quick way that I was able to use some of the decals that we have in Substance Source directly here in Painter. So that concludes this video. We now have fully textured our robot, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at how we can export our textures.